begin the current Daf in Mesechta Nedarim Daf Chof Aleph. We begin the third parak, Mesechta Nedarim parak Arba Nedarim on the bottom of Chof and Beis, 3 lines up the bottom of the Yomid, where the parak begins like the title of it regarding Arba Nedarim. We have an interesting discussion regarding 4 types of Nedarim that are going to take us through a few Mishnayos to explain these different types of Nedarim that Chacham said you don't even have to be shoyl on it. Although you said like seemingly a blatant neder, we're not going to consider this a neder as we're going to explain in the Mishnayos. Today's daf. Some of these in today's daf are these Arba Nedarim, the title of the parak, which are Tir Chacham. Chacham said it's okay. These are not considered Nedarim. They're called Nidri Zeruzim, regarding a neder that you're doing just to mazara someone, just to get him, worked up. Nidri Havai, is what's called hyperbolic or exaggerated Nedarim. We don't consider this as a real neder. Nidri Shkog is a neder that you took by mistake, and Nidri Einzin, that which was beyond the person's control. Now, Nidri Zeruzin, which is the one we're going to discuss in our Mishnah, they're not effective for 2 different reasons, as we'll see in the Gemara. One is because they're not mufla, it's not really specific, and also this is the way people usually talk. It doesn't really mean what the words seem like they're saying. Also, the concept of the Gemara tells us that actually, when you're allowed to undo a chacham, you can go hataras nedarim to a chacham. It actually has to be similar to these 4 nedarim, as we'll explain what it means that there's an opening, which actually the Gemara has a whole discussion. Again, very ambiguous, very nedarim style, and we're showing them how to really translate. But we differentiate when we say there's 2 ways of undoing a neder: either pesach, finding some type of opening that you didn't really mean this, or charas, a regret. I didn't really want this, but there's 2 types of regret that the Ran explains in today's daf. One's Peschim B'charat D'Meikara, where you're trying to understand to say, no, really, I regret ever having taken this in the first place. That's fundamentally different than In Peschim B'charat D'Hashka. Let's say, no, I don't regret, I want to, but now I regret it. The way it is right now, I don't want it. That's going to be very different than the Charat D'Meikara. Charat D'Meikara is I regret ever having done it in the first place. Charat D'Hashka is, no, I don't regret, but now I regret the way the situation is right now. And also one of the important concepts that comes in today's daf, if you say something, if you're thinking otherwise, that's not considered as a valid contradiction to the words you're actually saying. So we begin the current daf. Daf Chof Beis, 3 lines up on the bottom of the Yom. It says the Mishnah, Arba Nedarim. There are 4 types of Nedarim. Hitir Chacham, that the Chacham permit, which the Ran says, the Gemara is going to explain, meaning they permit it by itself. You don't even need a Heter Chacham. You don't even have to go to the sage to permit it. What are these 4 types of Nedarim? They're Nidre Zeruzin, meaning the whole purpose of his neder was really just to get his friend moving, so to speak, that he shouldn't be stubborn with where his position is, as we're going to explain. That's number 1. The Nidre Havai, which is a neder that is really exaggeration, it's really hyperbolic, it's nothing that of substance. The Nidre Shkaga is a neder where he assumed let's say, did not eat. Well, I forgot that he did eat, and that was what the neder was based on, but it was a mistake, it was an error. And the nidri einzin, and if someone has a neder where he puts a neder upon his friend, that if he doesn't perform a certain task, and subsequently is prevented him from fulfilling this task due to an einus, then it is not effective because lavadei t'hachaj, we'll see this in the later Mishnah, that was not his intention, that it's only, you're not going to do this, then I'm taking the neder, but the guy was beyond his control. What do you want from him? That is not going to be a valid neder. So our Mishnah goes and explains Nidre Zeruzin Ketzad. Okay, we're going to explain category number 1 from these 4 types of Nedarim in our Mishnah. So what does it mean you're being mazarisim? You're just trying to get him moving, you're trying to motivate him, and therefore you take a neder, but really you don't mean to make a neder. It's as follows. This actually is classic Israeli shuk type of conversation. So someone's trying to sell an object. He says, he says, I take a neder that I'm not going to make this less than a seller. What does it mean I'm taking a neder? So the Ran explains what the translation means. Meaning, I take a neder on the money you're going to pay me. If I'm going to sell this less than a seller, which is 4 dinar, I'm going to be forbidden to have this money. Essentially saying, I'm not selling this less than a seller. Because if I'm going to sell less than a seller, the money you're going to give me is kainim. It's forbidden for me to have enough of it. So he's taking a neder on that money. He says, I swear, you're not getting it. It's not swearing because it's a kainim, it's a neder, which in the chayf, it's an object. He's just saying that the money you're going to give me, if it's less than a seller, it's going to be asaba nami. So it would be the equivalent of a guy saying, I swear, I'm not doing this less than a seller. Okay, but Valoim, the buyer says, What are you, out of your mind? So here the equivalent would be that there's a neder on the purchased item. If I give you 1 cent more than a shekel, which is 2 dinar, that object is going to be asab anami. So essentially, he's swearing, saying, you're not getting a penny less than this, and they're both swearing this way. Says the Mishnah, as we continue top of Chof Aleph Mem Aleph, Shneim reitzin b'shleisha dinar. Both of them wanted for the price of 3 dinar. Meaning, like the Ram explains, the one who's selling, he had in mind, he's going to be selling this for 3 dinar. When he made a neder that he's not selling it for a kopek less than a neder, than a seller, which is 4 dinarim, that was only to be mezaris the buyer. Don't be stubborn and telling me that you're buying it for 2 dinarim. Let's agree by 3. So to the buyer, he intended to buy it for 3 dinarim. He just wanted to be mezaris the meicher to motivate him to agree, and don't be stubborn and think you're getting 4 dinar. So therefore the neder is not taking effect. Which Ran explains, the reason of this is because the normal practice of buyers and sellers is that they haggle, and that they swear, and that they stomp their feet and say, no way, you're nuts, I'm not giving this for less than this, I'm not buying this for more than that. But that's why he explains very importantly, it's not called Devarim Shebaleit. The Ran's addressing a very critical question. You had in mind that what was your intention doesn't make a difference. You swore, you took a neder, that it's going to be us. So how does a Mishnah say that it's totally permitted carte blanche? Because this is the normative practice, and this we know is what they're saying is what it means, and therefore this is not going to be considered as a neder. Which the Ran has a whole discussion regarding about people being stubborn and by the Yerushalmi, but that gets a little bit off. Now the Mishnah, so the Gemara explains the halacha of the Mishnah. We said, Abba Nedarim Itir Chacham B'chu. We said that there's 4 types of Nedarim that the Chachamim permitted, and one of them was the Mishnah of Nidre Zeruzin, which we just explained. So Amalei Rabba Bar Mama Rabba. He says, Amrit Lon Mishmei Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya. You told us the name of Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, who is not Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he's a grandson of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Man Tana. Who's the Tana of our Ba Nedam of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda. Why? The Amar Mishum Reb Tarfon, we quoted this on the previous daf, that Rabbi Yehuda had said in the name of Reb Tarfon, that La'olam Einechem Mehem Nazir, we quoted a case. We said that if, let's say, there's someone walking towards 2 people, and one of them says, I'm going to be a Nazir if he's, Moshe Stinkovitz, and the other guy says, I'm going to be a Nazir if he's not. Neither one of them, even though it's obvious it has to be one of them, neither of them is going to be a Nazir. Why? Naziris was only given over, like it says in the pasuk, kiyafli, has to be explicit when you took it that we know that it is the circumstance that you described it. So says the Ran, what's the Gemara comparing to this idea? The same thing is Nedarim, because Nedarim and Naziris are said in the same pasuk, where it doesn't take effect unless you took the neder without a tanai. Oh, so therefore, by this seller and the buyer, where they made their neder dependent on the condition. What does it mean their neder was dependent on the condition? He said, if I sell this less than 4 dinarim, then the object is forbidden on me. And the buyer said that if I pay anything more than 2 dinarim, it's going to be forbidden as a neder on me. That's a tanai. That's a stipulation. It's not taking a neder. It's if. Oh, so it says the Ran, even though they're violating their conditioning, it doesn't make a difference. The neder is not going to take effect. So even if he pays more than what he promised, he's not going to. Meaning, not promise. I'm just using that terminology to understand. But the neder, he's violating. The neder is going to kick in if you go more than 2 dinar, or if he's going to sell less than 4 dinar. But that's a tanai. That means that we don't know when you took it if there's going to be a neder or not. That's not lahafi. Just like the case of the nazir. We don't know if this is him, but we find that 20 seconds later, oh, it's him. No, it's not going to be a neder. Because when you said it, it wasn't clear if this neder or naziris is going to take effect. That's not lahafi. So you told us who's the Tana of the Mishnah of Abba Nedarim is Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Tarfon.
Isn't all the Nedarim she'oichal, she'lo-oichal, it's not a t'nai? All the Nedarim it's about it.
That's...
Ashmara she'oichal is the kicker zeh. She'lo-oichal kicker zeh.
No, he's saying right now, he's saying I'm taking it, I'm not going to eat it.
Yes.
That's right.
But it's a condition that I'm not going to eat it.
No, it's not a condition. That is the neder. Meaning, if you're saying condition, then the Chanam Reb Tarfon would hold that it wouldn't be a neder. If anytime there's an im, according to Reb Tarfon, you're right. The way the Gemara is saying it now, you would not be a neder.
Kikar says this is Ramesh a condition.
No. If I take a neder, if I claim like kikar zu, I take a neder. I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread. There's no condition. This neder makes the kikar.
Like kikar zu is not a condition.
Right.
She'oichal or she'lo yoichal is a condition.
That's a shiur usually. She'oichal is a shiur. I swear.
Koinim is a swear.
No. When you say koinim she'oichal kikar zu,
we learned that about.
could be the terminology. The Ram is very busy.
If I don't today, then I will tomorrow. Then.
But definitely there is a condition whether I eat it or
So,
not.
yes, if there's a condition according to Reb Tarfon, it would seemingly. I can't think of any reason offhand why it would be different. Anytime it's not specific, that we don't know it's going to take effect, that at least according to the way the first pshat in the Gemara is saying, then yeah, it wouldn't take effect. Now, Rav Ami says, no, afil temer rabbanon. You could even say the Tanav Mishnah is rabbanon. In other words, that the Mishnah of Nidrei Zeruzin is not because of hafla, because of, you weren't specific when you took it to know if it's going to take effect or not, and therefore it's never going to take effect. No, it's rather because the sages, they placed their consciousness to understand that this person did not take specifically a neder. It was only to motivate. Because look at the words, be medayik in the words. Mikatani, does it say shneim ratzu? That both of them want? What does it mean they would want? That would sound like that at the end they're agreeable. Look at the top line of our daf, of our Amid. It says shneim roitzim. If it would have said shneim ratzu b'shlesh dinarim, it would sound like, okay, really I swore I'm not going to do less than 4. You swore you're not going to do more than 2. Okay, we are agreeable for 3 dinarim. That would sound like at the end. No, shneim roitzin ketani. What's the difference between ratzu or roitzin? Roitzin is a constant. Ratzu is now in the present tense, which sounds like from the beginning until the end that they never had in mind to go ahead and make it he won't go less than 4 and he will not go more than 2. They always wanted that. So it's not a halacha that's specifically according to Reb Tarfon. Everyone would agree to this principle that it's allowed to be 3. It's no kainim taking effect, because really I never had in mind for this exact amount that I'm saying. Now the Ran gets into a little of a conversation. He says he wants to know, according to what the Gemara originally thought, that the reason, according to the first pshat, that the reason of the Mishnah is because of a flaw, that because it's not explicit, it's not specific, we don't know when you're taking if it's going to take effect or not. Then, because it was based on a condition if it's more than 2 or if it's less than 4, then it's going to be for benami. So then why does the Mishnah have to say that both of them are agreeable for 3 dinarim, as we're saying that, let's say it meant they are agreeable at the end. In other words, that the sale is valid for 3 dinarim, but even if the seller gives it for a shekel, or if the buyer gives it for a seller, the neder should be batal, because since at the time of the neder it was not verified if it's going to take effect or not. Why are you telling me shneim rates and b'shlesh dinarim? According to the first pshat of the Gemara, why do you need that for? Yeah. Who cares 3 dinarim? It doesn't make a difference. No neder. You can sell for whatever you want, or buy whatever you want. So on that says the Ran that it appears to me that the Tana is coming to tell you a chiddush. You don't have to say, again, what was this first pshat in the Gemara based on? It was based on the opinion of Reb Tarfon. The Gemara is trying to tell you a chiddush. That I don't have to say when 2 people are walking on the road, and one of them says, I'm a nazir, that's that person, and the other one says, I'm a nazir, it's not that person. Then we're saying that neither one is going to be a nazir according to Yehuda that says in the Reb Tarfon. Yes, there the halacha makes sense that the nazirs will not take effect, because the nazirs cannot take effect on both of them. It's a contradiction. One saying the opposite of the other. So since one is not going to be valid, the other one's also not going to be valid. Because from the first moment, there was definitely a Naziris here that was levatala, that was void. So we're going to say that all of them are going to be void, which is an interesting svar, but the Ram does bring this elsewhere, this svar, kibish bot zeh. Now, since in such a case it's obvious to the time of the Mishnah that it's not going to be hafla, we're saying that even by a seller and a buyer, where it is possible but the neder to take effect on both of them, And at the end, that's what it was, where they both agreed to 3 dinarim. Comes out that everyone is violating his condition, and you would have thought to say in such a situation would be considered hafla, where both of their nidarms are taking effect. Here the Ran's saying it, there's a chiddush over here. By the case of Tarfon, okay, that makes sense. It's not lahafli because you can't have both their conditions. One saying, I swear that it is him, one saying, I swear that it's not him. I'll be a nazir if yeah, I'll be a nazir if not. So it's contradictory. Okay, so it's not going to take effect. But here, we're actually there, it could be lahafli by both of them. If you do it for 3, so you would have thought to say that, therefore, that would be a problem. That's like the mashmon that was saying that, no, that doesn't say shneim rotzer, so shneim rotzer, that's what we would have had the halamina, according to the first shot. Now the Gemara has the following question. So we explained the halacha of the Mishnah now, based on if they're agreeable for 3, when one said, I'm not going to do less than 4, and he says, I'm not going to do more than 2. What's Omalei Ravina Ravashi? He says, Omalei, let's say the seller says, Tfei mi seller. In other words, he says to him, I'm taking a neder that I'm not going to sell it to you less than a seller and a pruta. Not like the halacha of the Mishnah. A seller is 4 dinar. A little bit more than the seller. V'halo and the buyer, he says, Batzer mi shekel. He says, I'm going to take a neder on the object if I'm not going to add on to you more than a little bit less than a shekel. So the question is, nidra hava, is that going to be considered as a neder? What's the question? Because you could say that since he was so precise, obviously he was specifically being noted, not just to motivate the person, because they're being very precise over here. He's not just saying a seller. I didn't pick a number out of the hat. He said a seller and a pruta. And the buyer said a little bit less than a shekel. He didn't say a shekel. He said like a little bit less than a shekel. So would that show from the precision that that's a neder? Or maybe it would still be considered as just motivating him, and it wouldn't be an indicator. Or another pshat the Ran says that when he said tfei misela, he said, I'm not giving it less than 5 dinar. And the other guy, the buyer, said less than shekel, meaning he says he's not going to give more than a dinar. Not a shekel, which is 2 dinar. Oh, so the question now is, do we say that since their numbers are so far away, so it's not like close that we're saying, oh, they're really just negotiating and they really like want a middle number. He's 5 and he's 1. Doesn't mean Batzer and Tvei. Like not 4 and 2. He's saying 5 and 1. Would you say that, okay, that's pretty far. They're not just motivating, they're holding their ground. And maybe it's not Nidei Zruz. So Malay said to him, Tanina, it's a mission of Samach Gimel and Mabez, and both versions of the Ran's question will be answered from this Mishnah. Mishnah says, if let's say someone was pressing by his friend to come eat by him, he says, come on, you have to come, my wife's begging for gas, you have to come. And the guest says, says, I take a neder on your home if I were to enter into it. Says, I take a neder on even a drop of cold water from you if I would taste. Says the Mishnah, what the halacha is, he's allowed to come into his house. And malicious men tell me he's allowed to take a cup of cold water from him. What does it mean? What are you he took a neder that he's not going to enter, that his house is forbidden to him, that his cold water is forbidden? No. This guy, his intention was for eating a meal, of eating and drinking. That's what he meant to say. It didn't really mean coming into the house and taking a cup of cold water. But Vamai says Gemara, but that's what he said. He said a drop of cold water. Ella rather says the Gemara, Mishtoy in the Shachit. This is how people speak. Oh, says the Ran, both points. So you see that even though the guy was so precise, he went down to gritty details. I'm coming to your house, you drink a cup of cold water. He's getting into specifics over here. And he's so far away from what his friend had submitted to him. Because that guy wanted him for a whole banquet, for a whole meal, and he's making himself forbidden even on stepping foot into his house and drinking a cup of cold water. And even so, we say that the neder is not precise. Oh, here also we see that this is how people speak. And that even though he said, one of them said more than a seller, and the other one said less than a shekel, that's called reason. and it's not dafka. So that answers both questions. If there were two versions in the Ran, either because it was so precise or because it was so far. You see both of them here in this Mishnah, that the guy was so precise and it was also so far away from what he was saying. And we said, it meant this nishn. It doesn't mean this. It's just like, negotiating, that just the way they're having this conversation. So you see that we answered the question that this would be considered as a nidri zeruzin. So Malay said to him, as he continued to his base, he says, no, me dummy, can you compare the two cases? Not comparable. You can't bring a right from that Mishnah. Why? God been saying, but that Mishnah of Samar Gimel Beis, by cold, when he was, I take a neder even on a drop of cold water from you. Tzadikim, oimrim ma'at is actually, this is last week's parasha with Abraham Avinu. Tzadikim, oimrim ma'at v'oisim harbe. The righteous, what they say a little and they do a lot. What does this have to do? Very interesting idea. Says the Ran, this guest was very afraid. What was he afraid of? If I'm going to agree to him to a drop of cold water, you know what he's going to do? Machabrucha. Before I know it, the guy brings out trays and trays of food. Because tzaddikim, they say a little and they do a lot. So that's why he said, I'm not even taking a drop of cold water from you. But that's lav dafka. That was just because he's afraid that I step foot into your house and your wife is suddenly piling me on, and I'm on this big diet, this keto diet, kendish or whatever, this intermittent fasting. I'm not allowed to eat. And I'm afraid I'm going to be piled on. Oh, but he hach over here where you cannot say that. Here has no relevancy to tzaddikim. Ma'at v'osim harbe is not. We're not my guests over here. It's about these are actually buyers and sellers. You couldn't have two people going at each other's necks. More than that, there's no one doing favors. It's a sveiku. Not sure. Dilma maybe when the seller said paches misela, I'm not doing, and lekech where he said v'yisa shekel, he said a little bit more than a shekel comma. He's saying maybe v'zidur doesn't have him. Maybe it's considered just motivating. The madaf could come up. Maybe again it's precise. The nidra have it, and it is a neder. So says the Gemara, Tibai. You're right that the question remains, and like the Ran says, we go to Chumrah that maybe it would be considered neder because it is precise and it's also very far away. And this is unlike the case you can't bring a raya from that Mishnah because that was for a specific reason why it's going to be not a neder, because of the concern of if I say a little bit, he's going to do a lot. But that's not because that was not my intention at all. There wouldn't be a riot to that of this when you have haggling between the customer and the seller. That would be a riot. Now, continuing on the theme of our Mishnah, says the Gemara, Amar Yehuda Meravasi says, Abba Nadam Halolu. Here it gets a little bit ambiguous again, the way the wording is. But we'll go with the Ran primarily. It says, Abba Nadam Halolu, these four Nadam of our Mishnah, Shichan Sheila Chacham. When you have this Nidrei Zerizin, this Nidrei Havai, you have any one of these Nidram that we describe in the Mishnah, you have to go to the Chacham to ask him, is this okay? It's a Nidrei Zerizin, and the Chacham will say, okay, fine, you don't have to keep it. But when they said this teaching in front of Shmuel, Amay says, how can you say this? The Tana is saying, there are four Nidram that the sages permitted, which sounds like that they totally permitted carte blanche without any request. You're saying you have to go ask the Chacham of this? How can you say this? Now, however, Rabbi Yosef Masna l'hoshmait b'haylishna, he said over this teaching in the following wording: Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Ravasi, ein Chacham, a whole different teaching really. The original teaching, which is that these four Nadarim need to have a Sheila Chacham. He says no, that's not what the teaching was. The teaching was as follows: Ein Chacham Rishoy lahatir. A sage is not permitted to be matir any neder with generic regret. Elikein arba nedarim halolu, rather has to be similar to these four types of nedarim, which requires what's called a pesach, which requires an opening. Meaning, as the Ram explains very, very importantly, he says a neder, when you permit it with a pesach, you find some type of opening in the neder itself. So his words are that it's mechiach mitoichay. It proves from inside that it was a neder tois, that it was a mistake. Because you're finding from the words he said himself that, that's not, I would never have meant that, I never would want that. So that's like these four nedarim, which we explained that you don't really want to take this neder. It's a shkaga, it's an oinus, you're just motivating the guy, whatever it is, you're just being exaggerating. So that's what we mean to say. how you allowed to be matir neder? But charata, the guy says, I regret it. You get my foot. To learn your lesson. Don't do things that you're not going to be able to live up to. And he says that that's the reason why a Pesach is better than charata, is because every neder that's permitted with a Pesach, the one who took the vow is saying that even in the beginning when I took a neder, had I paid attention to this opening that is being introduced to me right now, I would never have taken the neder. Comes out the neder was in a ta'us. It was a mistaken neder. But when you permit a neder with charata, with regret, you're not finding anything with the content itself that had the guy paid attention originally, he would not have taken the neder. Rather, he's saying this right now, because I was angry, or because I was too quick to act, I took a neder, and therefore now I regret that I've ever taken a neder. But there's nothing in the neder per se that you're showing that this was a mistaken neder. I regret doing it, but that's a fundamental difference. That's what the teaching of Rabbi Yehuda Rabasi was saying. You only could be matir the neder with a Pesach, you cannot be matir the neder with charata. Now, says the Gemara, Ksava ain't Pesach b'charata. Yes, because he held you cannot open with regret. You need to find some type of a Pesach that's mechiach mitoichai, that this is something you never wanted to do. However, the Gemara brings many stories, many Amiram that disagree with Rabasi, that they were Pesach b'charata. Says the Gemara, who doesn't come into Rabuna? Someone came in front of Rabuna, and he said about a neder, that he took and they didn't want to keep it anymore. Somebody said to him, Libach Allah, your heart was on you. In other words, says the Ran, was your emotions settled when you took the neder? And also now, do you not regret your neder until today? It's just that from now on you want to uproot it? As the Ran explains again very importantly, because we just, in the previous round, we differentiated between a Pesach and Charata, and now he's going to differentiate between two types of Charata. If it's the case that only now you regret it, 2 weeks into your neder, you say, I can't do this, I can't believe I took a neder. That would not even be considered as Charata, because we need to have what's called Charata de Me'ikara. We need to have an initial regret. Or is it that your heart wasn't settled, that, in other words, that because of anger you took the vow, and now you're regretting on what was from the beginning? Or is it that, no, when you took the vow, you were okay, but now you're not okay with it from this point onwards? So Madam Malay said to Malay, in other words, when I took it from the beginning, I was not in a good mental state, and therefore I regret on ever having taken this neder. Therefore, Visharye, he permitted the neder. But like the Ran explains, this is specifically because he took a regret from the beginning, like in such a case. But if he would only have regret right now, no, that would not be a valid regret, even according to one who holds Peischen B'charata. And says the Ran, I'll prove it to you. Because if you don't say this, what is the wording Peischen B'charata? Sounds like the courts make an opening for Peischen? I have regret. You don't have to have a Pesach. Obviously, you see that Charata doesn't just mean I regret it now. You have to find some type of an opening that do you regret ever having taken it? Yeah, if I would have known I was in anger, whatever it was. And another raya brings is from the Gemara shortly that Rav Huna he wants this story itself. Rav Huna, why did he have to ask from the one who was coming in front of him? He said asked him. He says Libach Allah. Of course, if he's coming to ask the Rav, obviously he regrets the neder. Why are you asking Libach Allah? Rather, says the Rav, obviously, because not enough just to regret it right now, but if you're asking, of course I'm coming for a heter. What do you think I'm coming for? Libach Allah? Obviously, because you need to have a charata mi'ikara, and that's what he asked. And those are two rayas the Ran has, and you see charata means mi'ikara and not just mi'hashka. Another story the Gemara brings, Someone came to Rav Huna, and Amalei said to him like this: if there would have been 10 people that they would have appeased you at that time, they would have said, no, Shlomo, don't do it. They would have appeased them, would calm them down. Mean that would you have taken the neder? He says, no, if I would have had 10 people calm me down at that time, I would never have taken such a neder. And therefore, and he permitted his neder. Now, the Ram brings two different girsayas that are not in our Gemara, which some Gemaras bring and show that there is a gears over here. This is on the first of the wide lines. The words he has in the gears is ksavar. So you see, he holds ain't paisrim b'charata, that you don't open up b'charata. But the Rambam says some have the girsa ksavar that he holds paisrim b'charata. And the classic Talmudic style, he says, and they're both true, both girsas, and actually the same reasoning, and they actually work together in tandem. He explains like this. He says, this idea of the Rav asking, if there would have been 10 people, would you have done it? And the guy says, no, that it's less than a Pesach, but it's more than regret. So you can say both of these ideas at the same idea. He explains. He says, it's less than a Pesach because there wasn't now 10 people that appeased him to say that it's a valid Pesach, that had he known, he would never have taken the neder. But that wasn't what happened. So you're explaining something, a possibility, but it wasn't like that. It's not a real Pesach. But it is better than regret, because by just regular regret, so the person doesn't find anything in himself that from the neder itself that he would have never taken the neder at that time. This guy knows by himself, had they appeased him at that time, he would not have taken the neder. So it comes out that it is a little bit more verified that he did take the neder too quickly. So it is like, it's better than just regular regret, because you're saying hypothetical in this situation, then yes, I would never have taken the neder. Charat is like, I just regret ever having taken it. So it's less than a Pesach, but it's more than the charata. So it says the Ran, that's the shot in both kisais. According to one that has the gear said that ain't paisrim b'charata, what it means to say is, regular charata you can't open up with. Only a charata that's more verified like this one. And according to the one that has the gear said that you do open up with charata, what it means to say is that you don't need to have a Pesach. Rather, it's enough with this verified type of charata. So both kisais are true. The Gemara, however, wants to say that Tanya learned the Braita that actually these two types of charatas seems to be a machlekes tanoim. Rabbi Yehuda, he says, we tell a person, Leiv ze alecha, is your heart on you? Imam alav, if it says not, matir neise, then we permit it for him, which that sounds like regular regret. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yisrael, he said, no, we tell a person, if there would have been 10 people that would have appeased you at that time, that would have taken the neder. Imam Allah, if it says not, then materialize, and then we permitted him. That sounds like the charata bruda, the more verified charata, which is you have to have at least this virtual reality, like this more of a visualization. Had it been like this, then that's going to be a valid charata. This seems to be a machlekes tanoim exactly what type of charata. Now the Gemara brings a simon and a manik to recall the stories with these the following Amiram, which was Asi, Velazar, Yechanan, and Vayana, which the first story is how Hudas coming to Rabasi. Somebody came under Rabasi. Amalei said to him, Kadu Tahis. What that means to say is, do you regret regret from the beginning, from the inception? That's the word Tahis, like the word Toyal Yerushaynus. Some of the regrets ever having done it in the first place. So do you regret this from the beginning?
Kadu is an animal. Kadu is an animal.
Kadu, right? But yeah, not here. So Amalei said to him, "Loi." So actually, the loi here, as the Ran explains, is a wonderment, like rhetorical, and not meaning. Do you think I don't regret it from ever having made it in the first place? And b'sharyeh, and therefore he permitted his neder because, as the Ran explains, he holds that you are peisech b'charata. You do open regret. Now the Ran says, how could you say that? Rabasi, we just quoted a moment ago that says im peisech b'charata. Says the Ran, you could say that there's Rebasi and there's Ravasi, and therefore it's not a contradiction. But this Rebasi, how that you do open up with Charat. Another story with the next Amar, who does come to Rabbi Lazar. A certain person came from Rabbi Lazar. Amalei said to him, Ba'is Nedar, did you want up until now your neder? It's just that from now on you're regretting, and if that's the case, you don't have Hataras Nedarim because you can't just regret right now. Amalei, no, he says, Iluloi Margazali, had it been that if they had not originally angered me, or I had not been in an angry state, in other words, then I would not have needed anything. In other words, I would never have taken a neder. It's only because I was angry. Therefore, now I regret ever having taken the neder in the first place. So Amalei says, okay, then tehei kabayis. then let it be like your desire. In other words, the neder is permitted the way you want it because that's a charata the meikara. Another story, the adarta labrata. There was a certain woman that took a neder on her daughter, and Asala come into Rabbi Yechonah. She came from Rabbi Yechonah. So Amallah, he said to her, Ilu havisidas, if you would have known the Amr Megedusach that your neighbors were going to speak Allah the bratach on your daughter as you continue to have bezim out, then Ilu chama ba chamas ba ime. That if it wasn't true that her mother saw on this daughter milan daziva things that because of that she should be forsaken, that she should not have any pleasure from her mother because of those things, meaning for nothing, she wouldn't make a neder for nothing. So the neighbors are saying, oh, we see that the daughter is like not, the mother's not letting the daughter have anything, no phone, no this, no that, obviously because she must have done something really bad. So the neighbors are talking. Mia Darta, would you have taken a neder knowing that people are going to speak about your daughter that way? Samarlei, she says, Loi, no, I would never have done. And Bisharya, and if we permitted the neder, which the Mefarish over here says, you can't infer from over here if it would be Pesach or not, because this is a Pesach, it wouldn't be clear if Charot or not. But again, these are different stories that we see what their opinions were regarding what is the Pesach. We had many different opinions. It has to be only a Pesach, could be min Charata, what type of Charata, Charata de Mikara, it seems like no one holds Charata de Hashta, but Charata de Mikara could be regular Charata, does have to be Charata Mavur, does have to be verified like this, like Ilu Habaisa, there were 10 people there, would have been, that seems to be the different opinions in today's. I think